From the very first exchange, Errol Spence Jr. and Tim Tszyu made it clear this wasn't going to be a cautious comeback story.
Just didn't have it. From the jump, you could tell that his balance was off. He was reaching. You know, he just didn't have it tonight.
You know, do you think it was a layoff? Do you think it was a combination of things? Like, what do you think?
Probably all of it.
All of it? Yeah.
He didn't take the punches well. He was slow. Like, you could just tell that Tim was more fresher.
Was it hard for you to watch?
Kinda. You know, I really wanted him to do real well. He did what he had to do to finish the fight, though. You know.
Hopefully he comes over here.
On Errol. All the best, Errol. You're a legend, mate. God bless.
I think he announced that he's not going to fight in the ring anymore. Obviously, you think that's the right decision based on what you saw here tonight, right?
Yeah, he's been in a lot of wars, you know, with his fighting style. Come forward, take some punishment, dish some punishment, and try to break somebody down. That type of style, you know, it don't even go so.
If anyone expected Spence to spend a few rounds shaking off 3 years of ring rust, they were wrong before the opening minute was over. His jab snapped into place immediately. The straight left found its target early, and
Well done, brother. Well done. Well done, Jeffrey.
117 to 111.
117 what? 111. 0-1.
The winner is Tim Tszyu, guys.
Well, Tim Tszyu, we know the journey that you have been on in recent years, and now you've arrived.
Hey, there we go.
he looked determined to remind everyone why he'd once ruled the division. But Tszyu clearly didn't get the memo about playing the supporting role. He marched forward without hesitation.
Yeah, I saw your tweet saying that the body language just wasn't there also.
Yeah, like I said, you know, he was all balanced, you know, and he just didn't have it tonight.
On the flip side, what'd you think of how Tim fought?
Tim did what Tim had to do to get the victory.
Yeah.
He was patient, and he went well to the body, and you know, he threw the right hand, landed the right hand when he had to, and he got the job done.
How does he match up now with the guys at 54 or 60, guys like Boots, guys like Virgil Ortiz, in your opinion, Terrence?
I don't see him coming back down to 154. He looked real strong at 160, so we'll see him with Carlos Adames and all those guys.
I was starving myself to get to 154, and I feel a big difference at 160. I feel like, I just feel much stronger, you know. One of my big things is strength, being able to bully my opponents, and I felt like that's what I did. I was actually a bit in shock. I thought, you know, Errol Spence was a legend again, but how I felt in front of him just felt completely different. Probably from round 3 onwards. And then I really felt like I could stop him at one stage. But then
Digging to the body, cutting off the ring, and making every second feel uncomfortable for Spence. The opening rounds were a battle of skill versus pressure, but before long, it became a contest of who could break the other's rhythm first. Every time Spence looked ready to take control with his sharp counters,
again, he was on survival half the time. He was running around. I was touching him up to the body. I think that was a big difference. Every time I hit him straight right to the body, he was going, you know, and sort of like me and him are the only ones that can hear that. And his body shots, they weren't landing. I was sort of catching. I was very very well aware of it. My thing was to catch, shoot. That's what we practiced for the first 3 rounds. In my first, I've been dropped 4 times, I think, or 3 times in the first round. So my thing is, I get too excited very quickly, so I need to slow it down and be able to, take the fight nice and slowly. So that's why I was just like, you know what, think of defense first, and then off.
Top of that, with the accident, you got thrown from a car doing an excess of 100 miles an hour. Your body's not the same. I don't give a damn what nobody tell me. You understand me? Say what you want to say. His body can't be the same. So for him to even take the fight says a lot. Because don't tell me you got thrown out of a vehicle doing over 100 miles an hour and you okay, you sane. You're not. Look at the color of the blood on his face last night.
In slick movement, Tszyu bulldozed his way back into the fight like he had absolutely no interest in respecting personal space. Then, just when it seemed the Australian was taking over, Spence would answer with a crisp combination that instantly flipped the momentum again. Neither man ever truly dictated the fight. Spence relied on experience, timing, and precision, while Tszyu refused to stop pushing the pace, forcing the action until the very end. By the championship rounds, both fighters were wearing the...
Errol had to make a change. Errol just always was pressure, and that's what got him everywhere. So he hasn't made no changes. So people mad at me about that, but that's just what the truth is. You understand me? That's just what the truth is. So I hate that people get mad when you tell the truth, but that's wrong. That's what's wrong with the world today. Nobody wants to hear the truth. Everybody get mad and take it personal when you tell the truth. Man, I love Dallas. Dallas loves me. I love Errol because Errol is a look what he accomplished.
Hey man, fireworks from round 1 to round 12. Literally, he's gotten some good shots. I think Errol Spence caught up and he did his second wind kicked in. He's landing great body shots, vicious vicious overhand lefts, vicious overhand rights. It was a great fight, man. I really enjoyed it, but it was definitely a great performance on Errol Spence's part.
Were you surprised by Errol Spence's tactics tonight? Just putting his forehead in and slugging it out?
No, I mean, that's really kind of Errol Spence's style. He was doing great, but it was just nothing he could do because his eye was swollen and messed up, and, he had to be stopped.
Punishment. But neither showed any interest in coasting to the finish. The 12th round felt like one final argument between 2 men, convinced they deserved the last word. When the bell finally rang, Spence confidently lifted his hands. Tszyu nodded as if he already knew the verdict. Both corners celebrated like they'd won, and the crowd could only laugh at the confusion.
Try to knock him out. Something like that happened. So, I mean, it's cool to be nice and all, but at the end of the game, it's boxing. You got to protect yourself at all times.
When you watch a fight like that against 2 potential opponents, are you looking for like holes that you can capitalize, or are you just watching it as a fan?
I'll just be watching. I already know what I can do. When I get in there, I know I'm gonna be able to bring anybody down and outsmart anybody. So I just gotta. I don't know. It was a good fight. Spence did what he's supposed to do. Same thing. Look good.
Now there was like a little miscommunication with the mouthpiece. Like Spence went down to look for it and then got hit. Like, what was your thoughts on that?
I don't know what he was doing. I think he said it was his fault or something like that. But I hasn't had no killer instinct. Anybody else would have tried to knock him out.
After 12 unforgettable rounds, everything came down to one final announcement from the judges, whose name would echo through the arena. If the final decision had fans arguing long after the last bell, Roy Jones Jr.'s reaction only poured more fuel on the fire. Roy didn't just watch Spence versus Tszyu, he watched
Spence. You could see it. Damned if I do, damned if I don't. He was afraid to come, and I don't mean afraid in a way of courage, but as far as common sense, as far as he was hesitant to come forward because he knew when he did, he walked into the sausage grinder. So he waited. He's like, if I didn't come forward, then he got beat to the punch with the long jab or with combinations behind it. Timed perfectly. So again, he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. Where he literally had him coming and going. I had said that it was going to start with the jab for both guys, and it did. The jab set the pace, set the
little moments that most people miss. To him, this wasn't simply about who landed the cleaner shots. It was about
early on, probably like in the 4th round, the odds started changing, and then he started, he was just working. I mean, Errol Spence is a workhorse, and Errol Spence doesn't bring all the crazy special effects to the fight, but what he does is he does bring is a great determination. You know what I'm saying? He's super determined, and he gonna do what he got to do, which is he trying. It's never been questionable because we seen him hit before. We seen him get hit, and this is in great shape, and he won the fight. So, like I said, because he know in his mind, in Errol Spence's mind, he know you don't want to fight. If you do want to fight, you don't want to fight this way.
Whether Errol Spence could still think like a champion after spending 3 years outside the ring. From the opening rounds, Roy loved how quickly Spence found his rhythm, using the jab to control distance, setting traps with a straight left, and making subtle adjustments instead of forcing the action. But he was just as quick to praise Tszyu. Roy admired Tim's relentless pressure, pointing out that he never allowed Spence to settle into a comfortable boxing match. Every time Errol started looking in control, Tszyu would crash the pocket, attack the body, and remind everyone this wasn't going to be a technical masterclass without consequences. That's what made the fight so compelling. Momentum never stayed in one corner for long. 1 minute it looked like Spence had solved the puzzle, the next Tszyu was tearing up the blueprint and making everyone question their scorecards again. Roy also reminded fans that expecting the exact same Spence from years ago was never realistic. After such a long layoff, the real victory was proving he could still adapt, stay composed, and respond when the pressure kept rising. In Roy's eyes, both men walked away with something valuable. Tszyu showed he belongs with the elite, while Spence proved championship instincts don't disappear just because the calendar keeps moving. That's why Roy's takeaway wasn't about nostalgia. It was about appreciating two fighters answering tough questions while creating a whole new debate for boxing fans. David Benavidez, meanwhile, looked at the fight from a completely different angle. He wasn't focused on flashy combinations or scorecards as much as he was impressed by the mindset both men brought into the ring. Benavidez loved the fact that neither fighter gave the other a second to breathe. Tszyu fought exactly the way everyone expected, marching forward, throwing with bad intentions, and refusing to let Spence dictate the pace. Even when Errol caught him clean, Tim never hit the reset button. He simply kept coming, almost like he had forgotten reverse was an option. But David was equally impressed with Spence's response. After 3 years away, plenty of fighters would have looked tentative. Instead, Errol stood his ground, answered with sharp counters, stayed disciplined behind the jab, and refused to let the pressure overwhelm him. That's the part Benavidez respected most. Training camps can make anyone look unbeatable, but the truth only shows up when another world-class fighter starts asking difficult questions. Tszyu asked those questions from the opening bell, and Spence kept finding answers. Benavidez also loved how unpredictable the momentum became. One sequence had Tszyu bullying his way forward with the crowd exploding behind him, and seconds later Spence would fire back with crisp combinations that completely flipped the energy inside the arena. There were no easy rounds, no safe moments, and no chance for either fighter to coast. Coming from one of boxing's biggest pressure fighters, that praise carried real weight. In Benavidez's eyes, Tszyu brought the storm, Spence stood tall in the middle of it. And by the time the final bell rang, both men had earned even more respect than they carried into the fight. David Benavidez admired the pressure and non-stop action, but Jaron "Boots" Ennis saw the fight through the eyes of a technician. While everyone else focused on the big exchanges, Boots was paying attention to the tiny details that often decide championship fights. He liked how Spence managed distance after spending 3 years away from the ring. That's usually where ring rust shows up first: your timing, your reactions, your foot placement. But Errol kept making subtle adjustments that prevented Tszyu from charging in without thinking twice. Boots knows better than anyone that a great jab isn't only about scoring points. Sometimes it's thrown just to make your opponent hesitate for a split second, and that brief pause is all an elite fighter needs to take control of the next exchange. Still, Ennis gave Tszyu plenty of respect. He loved the fact that Tim never accepted fighting at Spence's pace. Instead, he kept applying pressure, cutting off the ring, and forcing Errol to make difficult decisions every round. That's what impressed Boots the most. Training footage can look flawless, but none of it matters once someone is standing in front of you refusing to back down. Tszyu brought that challenge from the opening bell, and Spence kept responding with smart adjustments instead of desperate reactions. Boots also noticed that Errol wasn't trying to chase the explosive version of himself from years ago. He fought with patience, picked the right moments, and trusted experience over unnecessary risks. Tszyu, meanwhile, kept searching for new ways inside, changing angles and refusing to let the jab completely shut him out. Benavidez admired the heart, Boots admired the precision, and together they highlighted exactly why this fight stayed competitive until the very end. While Boots broke down the technical side, Teddy Atlas couldn't stop thinking about everything that happened before the opening bell. For 3 years, boxing fans wondered whether Errol Spence would ever look like himself again, and Teddy had openly questioned how much such a long layoff might take away from an elite fighter. After watching 12 hard rounds, though, he admitted the biggest answers couldn't come from sparring clips or training camp highlights. They had to come under the brightest lights against a dangerous opponent like Tim Tszyu. Teddy believed the real battle wasn't just physical, it was mental. Spence wasn't only fighting Tszyu. He was fighting years of doubt, criticism, and unanswered questions. What impressed Teddy was how calm Errol stayed whenever momentum started shifting. Instead of panicking or chasing highlight reel moments, he trusted his fundamentals, stayed disciplined behind the jab, and kept making smart decisions even when Tszyu turned up the pressure. But Teddy also praised him for refusing to play the role of a comeback opponent. He kept forcing exchanges, attacking the body, and making Spence earn every minute inside the ring. That's what Teddy loved most about the contest. It wasn't about who looked smoother when everything was going well. It was about who could stay composed when fatigue, pressure, and uncertainty all showed up at once. By the time the final bell sounded, Teddy felt both men had answered major questions. Spence proved that championship instincts can survive even the longest layoffs, while Tszyu proved he belongs in every conversation involving the division's elite. The biggest question before the fight was what Errol had lost during those 3 years. By the end of the night, boxing fans had stopped asking what was gone and started debating just how dangerous he still is. Jaron Ennis broke the fight down through timing and precision, but Teddy Atlas saw something much bigger. To Teddy, Spence versus Tszyu wasn't just another 12-round fight. It was the moment 3 years of questions finally demanded real answers. Before the bout, Teddy had openly wondered whether such a long layoff had taken too much away from Errol Spence. Training footage can look impressive, but Teddy believes there are things only a live fight can reveal. And against a relentless opponent like Tim Tszyu, there was nowhere to hide. What impressed him most wasn't Spence's offense, it was his mindset. Whenever Tszyu started building momentum and the crowd sensed a shift, Errol never rushed, never abandoned his game plan, and never let emotion take control. He stayed patient, trusted his experience, and understood that losing a round doesn't mean losing the fight. At the same time, Teddy gave Tszyu enormous credit for refusing to play the role of a comeback opponent. Tim kept marching forward, forcing exchanges, attacking the body, and making Spence answer difficult questions over and over again. That's why Teddy found the contest so fascinating. It wasn't about flashy combinations or highlight reel moments. It was about who could keep making smart decisions when fatigue, pressure, and doubt all showed up at once. By the final bell, Teddy believed both men had changed the conversation. Spence proved that years of inactivity hadn't erased his championship instincts, while Tszyu showed that setbacks hadn't damaged his confidence or his hunger. Before the fight, everyone wondered what Errol had lost. After 12 rounds, the debate became just how much greatness he still has left. Teddy Atlas focused on the mental battle, but Greg Hackett looked at the fight with one simple rule: forget the reputations and judge only what happened inside the ropes. Hackett wasn't interested in comparing this version of Spence to the one who dominated years ago. He wanted to evaluate the fighter who stepped into the ring against Tim Tszyu on this night. What stood out to Greg was how quickly Spence settled into a competitive rhythm despite the long absence. Tszyu repeatedly tried to crowd him, force him backward, and drag him into a physical fight. Yet Errol rarely looked rattled. Hackett pointed out that veteran experience doesn't always show up through speed or power. Sometimes it shows up in knowing exactly when to fire back, when to pivot away, and when to make an aggressive opponent pay for taking one step too many. Still, Greg wasn't giving Spence a free pass simply because he returned after 3 years. He praised Tszyu for treating him like an opponent instead of a legend. Tim never fought with hesitation. He kept applying pressure, challenged Spence every round, and made sure the comeback had to be earned instead of celebrated. That's what Hackett respected most. Neither fighter could rely on old accomplishments. Spence had to prove he still belonged among boxing's elite, while Tszyu had to prove he could handle a seasoned champion when the momentum stopped going his way. Greg also felt the performance should silence some of boxing's favorite overreactions. One loss doesn't end a career, and one setback doesn't erase world-class talent. In his eyes, both fighters reminded everyone that reputations mean very little once the opening bell rings. What matters is what happens between the ropes, and both men gave fans plenty to remember. After hearing Roy Jones Jr., David Benavidez, Jaron Ennis, Teddy Atlas, and Greg Hackett break down this fight from 5 completely different perspectives, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. Spence versus Tszyu delivered exactly the kind of fight boxing needed. Roy admired the veteran IQ, Benavidez loved the non-stop pressure. Boots appreciated the technical adjustments, Teddy focused on the mental toughness, and Hackett refused to let history influence what he saw in the ring. Now it's your turn. Did Errol Spence prove he still belongs among boxing's elite after 3 years away? Or did Tim Tszyu expose enough weaknesses to show that the old Spence may never fully return? And where do you think both fighters go from here? Drop your opinion in the comments. I have a feeling this debate is only getting started. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another update from Boxing Headquarters. Until next time, thanks for watching.